Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I'm Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historical context in which they occur. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between current events and the broader historic context in which they occur. This enables you to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is the ongoing struggle for freedom and self-determination in occupied historic Palestine. And my guest is the award-winning journalist, broadcaster, and political analyst who's based in Beirut, Lebanon, Laith Maru. As always, my brother, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be with you.
So let's start with the occurrence on Sunday, February 25th, where a 25-year-old active duty member of the United States Air Force, Aaron Bushnell, immolated himself outside the Israeli embassy in the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C. This was a one-airman revolt against the U.S.-backed genocide currently being perpetuated by Israel in the Gaza Strip. He has died from his injuries. Your thoughts, Laith, on the resonance? What's the resonance of this action in the region?
Well, first off, I would like to send my condolences to the family of Aaron and to all American soldiers that are thinking about the consequences of the orders that they're receiving from the depraved leadership in the United States. Aaron right now has become a symbol in the region here. He's called a martyr by the people in the streets. If you look at the social media discussions that have arisen since his immolation and sacrifice for peace in Palestine, you can see so much art being produced right now with the visual of him on fire, and what does this mean for people of consciousness. I think right now the region was looking to see if there anybody in the West that will stand up against the violence of their governments and their participation in this genocide. And we saw finally now a human face to the American populace, that they are not in alignment with the genocide being perpetuated in their name. Everybody here watched, of course, the live broadcast, the recording of that live broadcast that Aaron did. There is now a clear juxtapositioning between the selfless act that Aaron took and the security police that were holding a gun at him as he was burning alive. And this, of course, symbolizes on the one hand how the state and the police in the USA, how they respond to acts of, sympathy and solidarity in general. And those images, I think, have entered now our human collective consciousness, and it will not be forgotten. It's the same as the images of the Buddhist monks that burned themselves during the Vietnam War, and of course American citizens that did the same during the Vietnam War, that now are remembered as heroes of human consciousness. Aaron, while he's being attacked and by the Zionists right now after his martyrdom, and by the American establishment and media after his martyrdom. He will be remembered 30 years from now by the American people as an icon of American humanism.
You know, Laith, I appreciate you connecting the dots with the burning monk from 1963, because that's exactly what I thought about when I saw the video. And for those that don't know, back in June 11th, I think it was 1963, there was a Vietnamese monk named Thich Quang Duc, a Buddhist monk who protested against the persecution of Buddhists in South Vietnam by the government of President Diem. And some of the dots that I connected were that Vietnam was a failed French colony, as occupied Palestine is a failed colony. And in both cases, connecting the dots here, the United States stepped in to try to save the genocidal colonies. And then this also made me think about Frantz Fanon and his book Dying Colonialism, where he talks about the impact that this oppression has on the colonized, and that once they finally come to grips with their oppression and how they must resist their oppression, they can't be stopped. And so Aaron's Aaron Bushnell's martyrdom from all the way across in the United States, to me, shows not only the residents within Palestine, but what's happening around the world.
Yes, definitely. And look, the colonizers that are in Palestine right now are being emboldened by the support of the Western regimes. We see them filming themselves committing war crimes and distributing it on social media because they believe that nobody will ever hold them responsible. And so to look at the demonstrations that are happening in the West and how it's been going on for 5 months now almost, these demonstrations, and that they have either been ignored by Western media and or have been repressed by the authorities in the West. We see, for instance, last week, students, underage students, coming out from high schools in New York and getting beaten up and arrested. We see the same happening in Italy, where underage high school students walked out to end the war in Palestine, and again they got beaten and arrested by the police in Italy. And so the population itself in the West, who have awakened, who've seen the same images that we all saw on this planet, are reaching now a moment of realization that their own elite governments will refuse to represent them, refuse to listen to them. And this is why an action like Aaron's action, of his martyrdom, is going to be considered a turning point in this movement in the West. Now he forced the discussion on the media that has been silencing the population for so long, and now more and more of the populace that are out in the streets will be willing to take more direct action. I say this because, what Aaron did, maybe we don't need everybody to obviously emulate themselves, but it is the responsibility of specifically white people in the West to put their life at risk to end the genocide that is being committed in their name. And I would say this responsibility is even heavier on Jewish white people in the West. We've been seeing Jewish Voices for Peace or Independent Jewish Voices, all these organizations that are anti-Zionist, doing regular demonstrations blocking Central Square, whatever, a train station, or going into a museum or what have you. These are all ineffective actions, number one. Number two, they fall way below the threshold of the responsibility of Jewish white people. Jewish white people have to put their life at risk and occupy AIPAC, occupy the synagogues that are pitching hate from the pulpits, and free Judaism from Zionists. This may mean they will go to jail. This may mean they're going to get beaten up by the police. But that's the least they can do. This is not the responsibility of a Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim American, or even a Black American. We're our communities are already suffering from the repression of the states. Our communities are already counting their martyrs in Palestine, in Congo, in Sudan, in Haiti. So if our viewers here that are Jewish that are anti-Zionist, or white that are anti-Zionist, you should take the lead of Aaron, and doesn't mean that you need to emulate yourself, but you do have a responsibility to put your life at risk in order to be not culprit in the genocide.
To that point, what message gets sent when an African American woman like U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Linda Thomas Greenfield, casts the vote against the peace settlement in the UN, or U.S. Vice President, African American woman Kamala Harris goes to CARICOM trying to pitch the U.S. reinvasion of Haiti, or you have members of the Congressional Black Caucus that are engaged, that are coming to Israel on behalf of AIPAC, people like Congressman Gregory Meeks and some of the others. What signals are being sent? How is that being perceived in Lebanon? How is that being perceived in the region?
You know, you mentioned what's his name?
Gregory Meeks.
The wretched of the earth.
Frantz Fanon.
Frantz Fanon, and he obviously spoke to us about black faces with white masks. You know, and this is what people see with the American ambassador at the United Nations. I mean, people are calling her Aunt Jemima. You know, so she's selling the white flower on behalf of the elite. And so
I wrote a piece where I called it minstrel diplomacy. It's black faces on white supremacy.
Exactly. And this is what the West has been trying to do for the last 20 years with the bringing of Obama into power, to give a black face to American imperialism and colonialism and destruction of 7 countries under Obama. Of course, that never benefited anybody who's black or African in origin. Nothing that came out of Obama helped the African American communities. You know, we watch this, and I think the propaganda machine is collapsing of the West, because there's nobody now that can be tricked the same way that we were, you know, people were tricked in 2008 to elect Obama. In fact, we see the Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities in Michigan, for instance, saying that they will vote against Biden no matter what. They want to punish him. So even trying to scare these, you know, oppressed communities in the U.S. to vote Biden so Trump doesn't get elected, well, they don't care anymore. They all know, these communities, that it doesn't matter whether it's Democrat or Republican that's going to be in charge in the White House. They love to spill Arab blood and Muslim blood, and they will continue in their genocide of the Palestinian people. People are not going to vote for Biden, not because they think Trump is going to do better. They actually know that he's going to do the same, but they will refuse to be pawns in this, duality of theatrics that is called American democracy. And I think the looking at the African American community, they're also coming. Many of them are coming to this realization also, and we saw the churches in the U.S., the black churches taking position for ceasefire and what have you.
And that's a great point. There's another story that's in the Washington Post. Hamas leader hiding in Gaza, but killing him risks hostages. Israeli officials say that they're closing in on Yahya Sinwar, the accused architect of the October 7th resistance, and they're questioning whether his death will help end the war. They say that that's up for debate, and that he's hiding in this labyrinth of tunnels surrounded by Israeli hostages, and there's all this debate and discussion going on. How is this? What's the story there coming out of Lebanon as it relates to Yahya Sinwar? And hopefully I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Israeli propaganda has been flip-flopping for the last month about the whereabouts of Yahya Sinwar. For a while they were telling us that he escaped through tunnels to Egypt, and he's hiding in Egypt while his people are being slaughtered by Israel. Now we're being told, no, he's actually underground, and he's not only using Palestinians as shields, he's also using Israeli POWs as his human shields. So the propaganda of Israel, can't decide what it wants. It throws everything possible, every lie possible to catch some audience. Like, we keep on hearing that Israel is at once the representative of Western civilization, and that the attack on Israel is an attack on the West. And at the same time, we're being told that Israelis are somehow indigenous to Palestine. So they can't make up their mind, and they will throw every possible propaganda point out there, and hopefully one of them will stick with some of the audience, and that's what they continue to do. So go ahead.
Well, what about the kind of the subtle or not so subtle message that comes from stories like this? One man versus the movement. Because in this Washington Post article, it says that the actions by the IDF cannot stop until he's captured, as though capturing one man is going to have a dramatic impact on an entire movement. And from what I can discern, this whole one man versus the movement thing, that left the station 75 years ago, Laith Maru.
Oh, yes. And, the Israelis have periodically assassinated leaders of Palestinian resistance. Even just a few months ago here, the representative of Hamas in Beirut was assassinated through missiles in Al-Dahi, southern suburb of Beirut. And Hamas still goes on. Similarly with Islamic Jihad, similarly before them, Fatah and the PLFP. I mean, look, the quest for liberation and the idea of liberation, you can't assassinate that, number one. And as we see, Palestinians over the 75 years have built their structures of their organizations, and the knowledge sharing, and in ways that it doesn't matter if you assassinate one person. There's another 10 people behind them that have the same skills, and have the same positionality, and they continue on. Of course, this is not to underestimate the human factor. I speak differently than somebody else. People like me differently than they like somebody else. And yes, sometimes assassinations of symbols of resistance can have a deterrence, but not in the situation of Palestine. Palestine right now in itself is the symbol. And every Palestinian that is born knows how many of their families have been killed and raped and expelled by Israel. And this is enough fire to keep this struggle going till the end of this Zionist colony. And this is, what is happening right now. We are witnessing the end days of the Zionist colony. And it's a bloody affair. It's going to be a bloody affair because they will, the Zionists themselves and those who are behind them in the West are refusing the solution of South Africa. And they're also refusing the solution that Saladin, as you'd call him in English, gave to the Crusaders. So we will see a fight to the last man, and it's going to be bloody. We're coming now to an end of the first stage, the direct war inside Gaza. We're now at the doors of the second stage, which is a wider war in the region that includes all the non-state actors, Hezbollah, Ansarullah, Iraq and Syria resistance versus the United States and Israel. And the next second stage will last to 4 to 5 months. And as we get closer to the American election, we could be seeing a direct war between Iran and the United States.
Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, he said in a speech, I want to say it was last week, that this issue now has become bigger than just the Palestinians, that this is now a regional issue. And I interpreted that as kind of a clarion call. All adults in the pool now. Everybody's got to be in. Some people I believe misinterpreted that as his kind of dismissing the Palestinian discussion, but I interpreted that as his saying, no, that's still at the heart of this struggle, but he's calling on everybody. Again, all adults in the pool. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look at, what's happening in Yemen on a daily basis, the bombings by the US, the UK, on Yemen, on the capital, on the Hodeidah port, and the daily attacks by the Yemeni armed forces on American, British, and Israeli shipping boats, and on the American and British Navy. So we've reached now the United States itself is admitting that they are now embroiled in the largest and most sophisticated naval battle since World War II. This is not anymore just confined to Palestine, and the repercussions of this war, and as it rolls out even further, before it even opens up fully as a regional battle, we're already seeing historical things, that have been set for 600 years. For instance, the naval supremacy of Europe and the United States, and control of all waterways, that has been now demolished by Yemen. Before we even got into a full war, it's done. It's 600 years of history thrown into the garbage, and now we're entering a new era in naval history and control and battle mechanisms and what have you. Similarly, as we now roll into a full war between Lebanon and Israel, we are going to see an end of air supremacy of the West, and we'll discuss that more as we go on with this hour.
You mentioned just a couple of minutes ago about the end of the colony, and there are those who will argue, and I think this is a very valid point, that one of the reasons why the United States is backing the Zionist colony to the degree that it is because the West truly understands that the end of Zionist colonialism and occupied Palestine will bring about the end of colonialism itself, whether it's in Niger, in Congo. We can pick a colony that this is the linchpin, that as goes Israel, so goes the rest of colonization. Is that hyperbole, or as we look at what transpired in Vietnam, as Dr. King said, the moral arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice?
Yeah, look, to make it easier for some of our viewers to understand what's the historical moment that we're living, at the end of the Soviet Union, collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States went into a stage of expansion, rapid expansion of its imperial borders, and tried to swallow every state that escaped the colonial era after World War II. And so Somalia, Yugoslavia, Iraq, blah, 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 tens of states, Grenada, all of those that got swallowed in by American imperialism. And this stage of expansion reached its furthest point with the capture of Ukraine and the war in Syria. So the fact that the United States lost the war in Syria, that was the furthest point of expansion of American imperial borders, taking 1/3 of Syria and being defeated there. The war in Ukraine was the beginning of the stage of shrinking of the imperial borders. Russia liberating East and South Ukraine, that meant the United States borders, imperial borders, retracted. And today, the war in Palestine, if Palestine is liberated, and it will be liberated, I don't know at what cost humanly it will be, but it will be liberated. When Palestine is liberated, it will force the United States to retreat to its natural borders. Okay? Palestine is the point of projection of power of the United States as an empire into all of Western Asia and into all of East and North Africa. And if the United States loses this base, it is forced to retreat to its natural borders. And that means an end of American imperial era. And this is why we see the United States fighting full force to maintain the Zionist colony, because they know the outcomes of it will lead to the liberation of Palestine, will lead to that all of Africa and Asia escapes its grip, and we will see revolutionary movements mushrooming across that continent. We already see how the West lost the Sahel countries, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and what have you, that are entering into a federation now. We're going to have a Central African Federation of States that's going to encompass huge amounts of land, resources, and people that will rise into becoming a pole inside Africa. This is going to be just the beginning of the end of imperialism.
There's another story. This came through Al Mayadeen English. Hezbollah downs Israeli Hermes 450 drone over South Lebanon. The Islamic resistance announced that its fighters successfully shot down a large Hermes Israeli drone, violating Lebanese airspace over the town of Iklim al-Tufa in South Lebanon, using a surface-to-air missile. Again, hopefully I got that pronunciation somewhat close to reality. And they said that the downing of the drone could be seen with the naked eye. What is the significance of Hezbollah being able to down a drone, an Israeli drone of this type?
This is the most advanced Israeli drone. It is the jewel on their crown of drone production. It cost them, I don't know, almost $2 million to produce one of them. And the Lebanese resistance shooting it down over the central part of Lebanon, showed that first off, they have the air defenses that can track this supposed stealth drone. And by the way, the Israelis had to shoot 2 missiles from what they call David's lynch, or what do you call it? The swing.
The slingshot.
Sling. Yes, slingshot. David's sling. Okay, and it's such a blasphemous thing to name a weapon of war used in genocide in the name of our prophet David. So they used their most advanced air defenses to try to shoot down the anti-air missile from Hezbollah. They shot it from inside Palestine, probably stationed around 70 kilometers inside the occupied Palestine, so it doesn't get targeted by Hezbollah missiles, and shot it over Lebanon to try to stop these Lebanese air defense missiles that were trying to shoot the drone, and they missed them. And so the drone was shot down, and within an hour or so, the Israelis started bombarding the area where the drone fell, including Baalbek, the historical city in the Bekaa Valley in central Lebanon, 100 kilometers away from the borders of Palestine. And they hit, two different farms. They claimed that they were trying to target the air defenses of Hezbollah. And in retaliation, Hezbollah actually, rained missiles and drones on an Israeli colony on the border of the West Bank, 100 kilometers into occupied Palestine. And since the morning, have bombarded the Meron air base on top of Al Jarmuq mountain in north the Galilee, and the main control and command base of the Israeli military in the Golan Heights. Hundreds of missiles since the morning. So we've now entered clearly a new stage. The Hezbollah has began showing some of its advanced weapons that up until now it's been keeping for the right moment, and there's going to be much more surprises as this war breaks out on a full scale. But 100 kilometers inside Palestine, 100 kilometers inside Lebanon, that means both parties are willing and ready to hit their capitals. Tel Aviv and Lebanon and Beirut are at any moment could be the targets of these attacks.
And in fact, elaborate on that a little bit, because it was look at that timing pad.
Sorry about that.
It was a couple of weeks ago that Iran sent a missile into Pakistan, and the distance that missile traveled, as I understand it, was around 800 or 900 miles, and it struck its target. There are those who said then that was as much of a message to the United States and to the West that they could strike Tel Aviv, because the distance between the two was about the same. And so now you've got the shooting down of this Israeli drone. You have Ansar Allah in Yemen, that they're using, relatively speaking, very cheap missiles, something like $2,000 a missile, to impact the global maritime trade through the Red Sea. The whole dynamic in the region has changed since the last Israeli-Lebanese war. And if Israel couldn't beat Lebanon then, I don't know how they think they can do anything now. Am I right to connect those dots?
Oh yes. And look, even Yemen, up until now, we were told by the commander of the American Navy in the region, Central Command, in interviews to American media, that not only is this the largest naval battle since World War II that the U.S. is involved in, But this is also now the first time in history that ballistic missiles are used to hit moving naval targets. So this is a huge advancement and for Yemen, and it shows how greatly trained these Yemeni soldiers are. And you know, they're using ballistic missiles, they're using cruise missiles, they're using drones and naval drones and submarine drones to hit American Navy ships, British Navy ships, and nobody can stop them. In fact, the Yemenis themselves shot down an MQ-9 drone just last week, which is the most advanced American drone. It cost tens of millions of dollars. And then they also captured the most advanced American submarine drone, captured it as a whole, the Yemenis, and they brought it up to the beach, and they're going to hand it over to Iran and Russia, who are going to reverse engineer it. And, you know, so Yemen in itself, we should not underestimate their capabilities. And I tell you, if this war breaks out in full, I think up until now, the Yemeni forces have been restraining themselves on purpose, not sinking fully American destroyers or aircraft carriers. But if we have a full war with Lebanon here, I bet you that Yemen will definitely be sinking American Navy ships.
People, help me with the history here. I think I've got a fairly rough understanding. And when we hear the name Ansar Allah, I believe that roughly translates into helpers of God, and that the history is that as the Prophet, may peace be upon him, was going from Mecca to Medina, he went through Yemen and was assisted in his travels, was defended and supported in his travels by those who, from that assistance, called themselves the helpers of God. And so, to me, going back to Fanon, this goes to the mindset of the individuals that you're engaging in. And so if folks have this mindset, this belief that they are truly helpers of God, you're dealing with an enemy unlike the American forces, who in many instances are in it for a job. This is one reason why these folks have been as the fierce fighters that they've been for the centuries that they've been. Again, is that hyperbole, or am I connecting some dots here?
No, you're connecting a lot of important dots. Ansar means like people in solidarity, kind of, you know. So, okay. So those who are in solidarity with God, and you know, the Yemeni people have a long history that much of you in the West don't know, but they are the original Arabs. Okay, the marriage between the Qahtanite tribes and the Canaanite tribes is what gave us what we know as the Arabic people. It is one of the oldest civilization on this planet, you know, Queen Sheba and what have you. These are very faithful people that are very tough and humble at the same time. They were the first, you know, outside Mecca to become Muslim and support the Prophet Muhammad and stand in solidarity with him. And of course, they were known as some of the best seafarers in the world. Mm-hmm. They you know, would travel from Yemen all the way to the Philippines and Indonesia, and all the way down to Madagascar and Mozambique. And through their trade and good behavior and you know, intermarried and spread Islam without you know, without any fight. You know, they were, you know, you couldn't say that they've ever forced anybody to Islam, Yemenis. In fact, their good deeds and their good behavior, it's what spread Islam to the most populous Muslim country in the world, Indonesia, and so forth. So, you know, the way that the West wanted to replace this honorable Arab that is symbolized by the Yemeni, by the oil sheikhs, the gluttonous oil sheikhs that the West created as the archetype of Arabs. Today, the Yemeni people, with their outwardly behavior and stance to the world, have rebirthed the honorable Arab to the world, and have frustrated this 100-year propaganda machine that made the Arab into this filthy, you know, oil sheikhs that are hungry for prostitution and spending money.
The Washington Post has reported that as ceasefire talks continue in Qatar, that the Palestinian Authority president has accepted cabinet resignations. President Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, he has accepted the resignation of his prime minister and of his cabinet. And they put this in the context of new, what they call political arrangements that are necessary to achieve inter-Palestinian consensus. And I interpret this as really being a total misrepresentation of reality, because as I understand it, particularly relative to this conflict, Mahmoud Abbas has almost no impact, has no control. The Palestinians don't trust him. And so he really seems to be operating as an emissary for the West, as opposed to really being able to have any impact on the outcome of this conflict.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to create a Palestinian leadership before the war is even over, and of course, it's not going to go anywhere. The Palestinian groups like Hamas, Islamic Jihad, PLFP, all others other than Fatah have been constantly calling for a unity government, for a representation at the Palestinian Liberation Organization, for a dissolution of the Palestinian Authority. And Mahmoud Abbas, as a good house slave, is refusing all of these. And in fact, we heard them over the last few weeks attacking the resistance in Gaza, saying that they're kind of to blame for the deaths, repeating the racist words of his masters in Tel Aviv and DC. So he is irrelevant, and his government, you know, whether they resign or not, I mean, what are they doing really? There's nothing that his government is doing except collaborating with the colonizer, with the Zionist. And right now, we can see that, for instance, Russia is trying to bring together the Palestinian factions. They've been invited to Moscow, the Fatah, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad. We'll see what happens there. That's a more logical path to creating a national government for the Palestinians than what the West is trying to do, which is irrelevant, really.
So it sounds as though, in terms of what's being promoted through the Western media, as in the Washington Post, that by going through the path of Mahmoud Abbas, the United States, to a great degree, is really negotiating with itself. And that because they don't have they make it appear through their descriptions that they have the major players in the room. And I think I read today that a ceasefire is on the horizon. So
you put your finger on the right button there. You see, they've been saying that there's going to be a ceasefire. Yesterday, Biden is like, "Oh, we're going to have a ceasefire over the weekend," and Hamas is like, "What are you talking about? We haven't received anything. Who are you talking with?" And this is what it is. There's a circle, you know, that's without using the awful word that you do it, of you know, Jordanian, Egyptian, Turkish, Qatari American and Israelis, and they're all like, so they're wishful thinking, but they're under so much pressure that they're coming out. They're
pressure from who? Pressure from whom? They're under so much. Who's under the pressure, and under pressure from who?
They're under pressure from their own populace. They're under the West elite, the Western elite, and the elite in Jordan, Egypt, Qatar, and what have you. They are all under a lot of pressure, so they have to keep on pretending that there is, on the one hand, a ceasefire possibility, and on the other, that they can achieve it. Of course, the Palestinians are not going to surrender in Gaza, and the Israelis and the Americans are going to have to either end this war with a defeat and or actually continue to a larger war that's going to have bigger genocide happening.
There are reports that Danish pension funds are divesting from Israeli banks and companies, that financial institutions across Denmark, they're facing new increased pressure from the Danish public to withdraw their investments. This is coming from the New Arab, to withdraw their investments from Israel as demonstrations continue for the fourth month running in protest against the ongoing genocide in Gaza. What I see here now manifesting itself in Denmark, connecting the dots to what transpired in South Africa with the Western move to divest pension funds and other interests from those doing business in South Africa. Are you seeing similarities here? And as we talk about the BDS movement, it seems now to be gaining a lot more traction. Speak to that, please.
Yeah, this is one amongst many. Obviously, it's a huge success to have this withdrawal of all investments. We saw Spain stop the sale and transfer of weapons to Israel. We saw Japanese arms companies cutting their contracts with Israeli arms manufacturers. And, this will continue, hopefully. But look at the difference. We have to always, yes, we have to look for similarities with previous struggles, but we have to also recognize the differences. During the war for the liberation of South Africa, Namibia, Angola from apartheid control and colonialism, we had Cuba come down with fighters to aid Angola and Namibia in their struggle. But we didn't see Americans come to the aid of South Africa militarily, openly. Yes, they were supplying them with weapons, but they were not bringing their navy to fire at Cuban fighters. But what we see today is the United States, the United Kingdom, and pretty soon now we will be seeing European ships to support the US and the UK in their fight against Yemen. We will see now all of Europe fighting Yemen on behalf of Israel. So this is, I think, the limitation of the comparison. The limitation of the comparisons, it seems that the West will fight all the way to maintain the Zionist colony, while they didn't do that in the case of South Africa.
There's another story, and this one they say was not widely reported, if reported at all. Israeli operations in Gaza are in total chaos thanks to privatization of logistics. They talk about in Tel Aviv that they began a large-scale invasion of Gaza on the 27th of October, and that this was basically a total failure, that the Israelis really had no clue. They were in total confusion. They were in total chaos, and that this wasn't that widely reported. One of their retired generals IDF Major General Itzhak Brick said that there is a total mess that's not being talked about in the media. He was a veteran of the 1973 Yom Kippur War and the 1982 Lebanon War. He said, behind our excellent soldiers, there is total chaos. Equipment, logistics, food, everything that needs to be moved forward is not working properly because the Army has entrusted everything to private companies. Because we had been led to believe before all of this started on the 6th of October that that the IDF was the superior force, and that a lot of folks figured, that once Hamas went in on the 6th, that a couple days, this is going to be over. And now what we're finding is now they're struggling for survival.
Yeah, they're struggling very, very hard. And remember, on October 7th, Hamas managed to take over 11 bases, Israeli bases on the borders of Gaza, and the main Shabak and Mossad base deeper in, away from the border with Gaza, and the main headquarters of the Israeli police special forces, like the SWAT. And so didn't
you tell me that Israel lost 12 generals?
Yes.
On the 6th of October?
So they lost 12 generals on the 7th of October, and all their underlings basically also. And so these are the elite units that Israel had, and the frontline units with Gaza destroyed completely. And since then, of course, everybody that they replaced these generals with has been practically slaughtered on the battlefield of Gaza. The ages of commanders in the Israeli military that are being declared as dead. In the beginning of this war, the average age for a lieutenant colonel or a major general were in their late 30s, early 40s. Now the ages are in the early 20s. So this is like around a 20-year drop in the age of officers in the corps that the Israeli military has. So this means that they don't have the experience anymore. They don't have the knowledge of the battlefield. And now you add to it that you have mercenaries and private companies doing these supplies for Israel, and you clearly have chaos. And add to it that you have American, British, French generals sitting in the command center, everybody with their own views of things. It's a total mess. And it's showing that the Israeli military doesn't have options. They can't imagine options except genocide, which they are good at, targeting civilians.
In the couple of minutes that we have left, I want to give you the mic and allow you to speak to the West, speak to the world. This is an international program. What are the two or three major things that you feel are not being communicated in the West that people really need to hear in order to have a better grasp of the reality in the region, to have a better grasp of the reality on the ground? Laith Maru, the floor is yours.
First thing I would say to our Western audience is that they should be doing more to not only to help us in Palestine, liberation of it, but to get themselves ready for what's coming for them. They already lost the right to speech, the right to media representation, the right to assembly is almost disappearing. And now, as we saw in the United Kingdom last week during the vote on the ceasefire brought by the the Scottish Nationalist Party, they've also lost their right to representation, democratic representation at their parliaments. And if this war continues as I am predicting and telling you it's going to be in the next few days, go into a much wider regional war with American and British soldiers coming back in coffins, you know, people should be ready to even lose their possibility to have any representation, democratic representation in the US and the UK. And, you know, people may think this is a little of an exaggeration, but let's just imagine it for a second that, you know, the United States goes into full war with Iran and all the axis of resistance here as the election is coming in the United States. Will there be an election? I mean, Biden already knows that he's losing the election because of the Arab Muslim vote. It's already done. He wants to ban Trump. If he bans Trump, if he can't ban Trump, what is he going to do? We may find ourselves in martial law in the West, all to save the Zionist colony. And I would urge the public in the West to do something before we get to that point. Because if we get to that point and we're in martial law in the capitals of London and Ottawa and Washington, D.C., there's no way you can come back from that. It is the time right now to take action to change the direction of these governments.
Let me, if I'm not even going to think to put words in your mouth, but let me see if I can convey this a slightly different way. You're not predicting what's going to happen. You are looking at the current reality and discussing the possibilities of what could happen. And I remember talking with you, you and I talk all the time. I remember talking with you, I want to say last June, last July, last August, and you were saying to me then, something big is about to happen. And I kept saying to you, what are you talking about? You said, well, I don't know, but the sense on the ground is something big is about to happen. And you started saying that more even in September. You said something big is about to happen. And then October 7th happened. And I said, that damn Laith boy, he you know, so it's a matter of being in tune to what's going on around you. And the other dot that I'll connect here, and again, if I'm wrong, please correct me. For those that don't believe that the Western governments would attack the media, look at what's being done to Julian Assange. And that, I believe, is a clear signal. The United States is trying to extradite from London an Australian citizen who's never set, to my knowledge, never set foot in the United States, has no business in the United States, and they're trying to extradite him from London for violating American law, all in the attempt to scare Western journalists to not report reality. Am I wrong to connect those dots, Laith Maru?
You're not wrong, and I just want to be clear that I'm not a fortune teller. But because I live here and have been in, you know, meeting with people, seeing the things that are happening, and because I lived 27 years in Canada and the United States, and I'm married to an American, my children are American and Canadian, I have worked on these subjects and have seen the repression that came on myself for this work. I can tell you what is, you know, we're not going to see the same things that happened 20 years ago, the expulsion of students, for instance, from universities. We're going to see them being shot, as we saw chemical weapons being thrown at students at Columbia University. We are getting very close, as we saw right now with the Vietnam emulation coming back. Mm-hmm. Right now, we could be seeing any moment now, American students being shot by the National Guard because they're demonstrating for the liberation of Palestine. This is the reality. And as we saw in Palestine here and the region expanding this war, if a war breaks out right now in Lebanon at a full scale, we're just still now skirmishes. Mm-hmm. The numbers of 40,000 dead in Gaza are going to be seen in one day. It's not going to be something, these numbers are going to explode. And this is going to drag us into those people that are demonstrating in the streets in the US and Canada and England. Are they going to demonstrate less or more when the numbers double and triple and quadruple in days of martyrs? Are they going to take more drastic action like Aaron or not? Of course they are. And how is the state going to respond? It is going to respond with more repression. And the minute the situation gets out of hand, we will see ourselves in those possibilities of martial law being called in these countries.
My dear brother, Laith Maru, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Folks, thank you so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Stay tuned for new episodes that come out every week. Also, please, baby, please follow and subscribe. Leave a review. Share the show. Follow us on social media. You can find all the links to the show. They are listed below. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter on Connecting the Dots. See you again next time. Until then, I'm Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a great one. Peace. We're out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.